So it's not every day that I'm checking out a new phone brand, and Infinix. This is the first time I've covered them, and they sent me this, which is the Hot 40 Pro. It's their latest affordable phone from them, with some pretty good specs for the price point. So this is powered by the Helio G99, comes with 8GB of RAM and 8GB of virtual memory too, and 256GB of storage, micro SD card support, 3.5mm headphone jack, 108 megapixel rear sensor, FM radio, and a 32 megapixel selfie camera. The screen, well, it's Full HD plus, the resolution, 120 Hz. So there's quite a lot on offer for the price point. And they also sent me this, which is the Free Fire Special Edition. And I'll show you what we get with this. So we have a welcome card with it. They send out also 3 sets of different stickers there for Free Fire. A lanyard for the phone, so maybe you want to put that around your neck so you don't drop it, whatever. It's actually not a bad quality one. And this here, which is a phone cooler for it for those long gaming sessions. And finally, a coupon code for Free Fire. With the Free Fire Special Edition, you get this special case that you can see, a little bit different than the standard one. The standard SIM tray tool, and finally our Type-C to Type-A cable and the 33-watt charger. I'll let you know the exact charging times later on in this review. So first thing you notice is, for me, handling some of the other phones that I have, that the weight of it is reasonably, well, I wouldn't say light, but it's definitely a lot lighter than the phones I'm typically using. This is 199 grams, and its thickness here, we are looking at 8.25 millimeters. Now, it's got this chrome-style plastic frame all around the outside of it. We've got dual loudspeakers here that do support DTS audio, and it's high-res certified too as well. This particular phone here, our Type-C port, USB 2 speeds here, microphone, 3.5 millimeter jack. Really good to see that this is still around. They have not removed that. The other loudspeaker there. And this has a texture to it, the back of it. And you can see at certain angles, it does reflect a little bit differently there. Now for the cameras, that 108 megapixel camera, it does not have optical image stabilization, but great to see that megapixel capacity there at this price point. Our flash right there too as well. And there is a 2 megapixel camera on the back there for AI and another for macro too as well. We have this chrome style around here, the chrome around the lenses, and the volume up and down there. Now that side capacitive always on fingerprint reader, and I'll just show you it in action. So I'll just turn the phone off, and when you touch it, it's always on, it unlocks, and it seems to work really well. I think this is a lot more accurate than in-screen fingerprint readers for me, because this seems to just work 10 out of 10 times. Really good. And there we have our 32 megapixel front facing camera here. Now the bezels, you can see, aren't super thin. There is a bit of a bezel here at the bottom. The sides are the same here. And well, again, for what it's selling for, it's okay. Yeah, so it is an IPS screen here we're looking at. So full HD plus resolution and 120 Hertz. So the UI and everything is nice and smooth at that 120 Hertz there. So you definitely notice that stepping up from, say, 60 Hertz, you can notice that difference there in the performance. Now, I'll show you the SIM tray here, which is located on the upper left, and I really do like what they've done with this. So just like the 3.5 millimeter headphone jack, this is another great thing to have. So it can take 2 nano SIMs, dual SIM support, and micro SD. So many phones do away with the micro SD. It's just 2 nano SIMs. Or if you're going to insert a micro SD card, you have to give up one of the nano SIMs. But you don't here with the Hot 40 Pro. So looking at that screen, 120 Hertz, as I mentioned now a couple of times, really good to see that. And if you go into display settings, you have a few options for that refresh rate. And I like to set 120 Hertz because that is what you're paying for, and that's really what you'll be using, unless, of course, you do have a low battery and you want to put it maybe onto 60. And great to see they offer this, 90. Not a lot of brands do this. A lot of them just give you 60 or 120 Hertz. And that is, of course, the sweet spot there between fluidity and battery life. I often mention this in my videos. You got auto switch the refresh rate too if you want, but I'm going to keep it here on 120. So this display does max out the brightness at 500 nits. And you can see in direct sunlight right now, it feels okay, reasonable for this kind of brightness. An IPS panel too as well. So you will notice that just where the notch is for that front-facing 32 megapixel camera, see how it's slightly dimmer just around there. So it's not quite uniformed brightness or colors on the very edges or just around the notch. You notice a little bit just down here too, but overall not too bad of a screen. And it's just 120 hertz that I really do like about it, that it's nice and fluid. Now, in general, the UI performance is quite fluid and smooth. However, you do notice that if you have, say, a demanding game in the background like Genshin Impact, you go back into the UI, that you will sometimes see it slow down a little bit, which is to be expected. Now, we have 8 gigabytes of physical RAM, but they have another 8 that is virtual memory, so some caching going on there just to help it be a little bit more fluid there too as well. So 256 gigabytes of storage with this model, and they do advertise, you'll see on the box, or at least on the outside here of the Free Fire, sorry, it does state there 16 gigabytes of RAM, 8 plus 8, but of course it's only the 8 that is the hardware, the other 8 being that virtual as I just mentioned there. So the UI performance is alright, and this is XOS that we are running here, and I'm on 13.5. This is the version that was up to date at the time of me recording this review after using the phone for now a week, getting ready for the launch there. So performance in general, pretty good most of the time. Just remember to use the task manager, kill off apps in the background if you want to keep that fluidity up with the Helio G99. But great that it's got 8 gigabytes of RAM. It certainly does help out. So the Hot 40 Pro does have NFC, and it even has this here. You'll see that there's an app called Wow FM, and this is, yes, a hardware tuner. So this is good. This is another positive that we've got, of course, that 3.5 millimeter headphone jack that you need to plug in a headset. It will act then as your aerial for it, the antenna, and of course, micro SD card support. So there's a few little extra things that you don't normally see, and the dual loudspeakers that are on board with this. So what about bloatware when you first get it? Well, there are a few things, as you can see, like Facebook, TikTok, whatnot. It's not as bad as what I've experienced with Xiaomi. They tend to put quite a bit more bloatware on, but there are a few things that maybe you want to remove. It depends if you want them or not. Some people might say, hey, I don't consider Facebook to be bloatware. But it's all down to personal preference there, of course. So that's the update that I just, of course, talked about, that I'm on 13.5. And what about safety net status? We do get, of course, here a pass, and you can use your banking apps and whatnot with that NFC on board. Camera 2 Probe, this is a full. Level 3 would be the best, but it's full support here for the cameras, which is okay. If you want to try out open camera or look at Gcam ports, if you're into that, you mess about with that. And we do have a Widevine level 1 security cert here for DRM, so things like Netflix and whatnot will be in full HD, which is good. And this is the Antutu score. So we're getting from the Helio G99 a score of just over 400,000. That certainly puts it in the category that it is, which is a low end. So this is more of an affordable phone, of course, and that performance is a couple of years ago, this would have been mid-range, but it's about there, below mid-range, but not too bad for this style of phone. So our storage performance, okay, we get sequential reads of over 1,000 megabytes per second and writes of 800. Random access is actually very good there, so that's not going to be a bottleneck at all for the phone. It's more probably that actual G99. So battery life, okay. Set to 120 hertz, and it's a full HD plus resolution. It's actually pretty good on this phone here. We do have a, reasonably large 5,000 milliamp hour battery. Well, it's pretty much standard nowadays, and it can go for quite some time there. Now, of course, if you are gaming, you're probably looking at about half of this, because gaming is going to use a lot of energy there. So charging time too, for the 33 watt charging, I went from, okay, just ignore this because it decided to stop at 94 and keep going to 100, but I did time it manually. It's a little hard to see there because of the blue and red, but it's 1 hour and 17 minutes to fully charge the 5,000 milliamp hour battery with that 33 watt charger. The Hot 40 Pro does have GPS on board. It also has a gyroscope, and there is a compass too. Now, I'm indoors, and I can get accuracy down to 1 meter. First lock took a matter of seconds, probably about 5 seconds or so to get the first lock, which was very good. Wi-Fi strength is another thing that seems to be reasonably good as well. I've had no issues at all with the Wi-Fi, no matter how I hold it. I think the plastic frame is definitely helping there. And you can see that is the hardware compass. So if I start to move the phone around, that is, of course, going to change. And then the haptics, just to comment on that, you get a light little pulse. It's nothing amazing, but the haptics engine, the little motor in there is there and you can feel it. It just could be a little stronger. That's the only thing. But again, I think for the style of phone, it's still acceptable. So call quality, I haven't really noticed any issues at all with this phone with calls. And then of course you do have this, you can plug in the headset and that is great. So 3.5mm support. Now it does sound really good through them. I didn't experience any issues either with that audio output. The volume, top volume using 3.5 seemed to be good as well. Now we've got the top speaker coming out, the earpiece and the little ports at the top and then the bottom, so with those dual loudspeakers. The sample I give you now is at 100% volume and you hear that the speakers, they are loud. They don't really have that much bass to them though, so they are quite flat sounding, but the loudness is good. And because I do happen to have the Free Fire edition here, I decided that, yeah, I might as well test the game out, right? You want to check on that performance. So the performance is fine. I've got someone here shooting at me. Where on earth are they? Ah, they're in the window there. Okay. All right, so managed to get one kill. And I've got someone else shooting at me from over here somewhere. So you can put it into the performance mode, which I currently have on. So if you swipe from the side here, bring up this menu, you've got, see the options here? I'll put it into performance to help boost our frame rate, but it is good. It's running well. All right, so that is good. Let's go over now to a game even more demanding than Free Fire here, and that is Genshin Impact on the maximum settings. And it is running fine with a very playable frame rate, but for the Helio G99, I do recommend keeping this game at least on the default settings, lower settings. Don't put it onto the highest because it will struggle a little bit with it, even if we do have that 8GB of RAM. So it can play all of the titles out there in the Play Store, which is great. And then how about our thermals? Well, it does feel a little warm, and only a little warm. I don't see any throttling, and I don't think thermals are going to be an issue at all with this, because the Helio G99, let's face it, it's not a super powerful chipset, so it's not generating a massive amount of heat because it just simply isn't powerful enough to do so. So even if I did have the case on it, the thermals would still be fine. It is just going to get warm. You feel the screen is getting warm on the back here, but I can already tell that those kind of temperatures, they are not an issue. Moving over to the cameras now, let's have a look and see what the Hot 40 can do. So this is 2K front-facing camera, maximum resolution, and it does not seem to have any electronic image stabilization. So I'll have to swap over to the stabilized mode, which is 1080p. Infinix calls this ultra steady mode, and you can see now we've got the electronic image stabilization as I walk along. It is reasonably steady. It's looking pretty good. Let's move over to the rear cameras now and take a look at what kind of performance we're going to get. This is our 108 megapixel sensor, which does not have any electronic image stabilization if you decide to film at the maximum resolution, which I am now, and that is 2K. Audio bitrate is 256 kilobits per second. So you're going to need a tripod or a gimbal if you're going to record with the 2K option. This is now the 1080p ultra steady mode, which does have image stabilization, being electronic only here. There's no optical image stabilization. And as you can see, it's a lot smoother, steady now, and not shaking all over the place. So it's probably the best option to use is this 1080p ultra steady mode. Now for some still samples. So 32 megapixel camera did actually do a really good job here. Look at the details that are captured with this portrait mode selfie. This is now the rear 108 megapixel camera. Stitching could be better with the portrait mode around my daughter's hair there. But look at these details with my cat Vera. When you zoom in, this is 200% crop now. So many details are captured there, so it looks pretty good. This shot here, not too bad considering we are facing the sun, so that's HDR. Again here, another bright looking shot. As long as the lighting is good, the photos from the main camera actually look really decent. Low light now, this is where it's not quite as good, but that photo's not actually too bad. So this is night shot mode off, and now with the night shot mode on, you can see it improves it slightly, but not really that good because we don't have optical image stabilization here. So I do like what I'm seeing here from a value point of view. You get a lot on offer here. As I mentioned in the video, you get that micro SD card support, 3.5mm headphone jack, FM radio, 108 megapixel sensor. The Dimensity Helio G99 performance is decent enough considering what this is selling for. The plastic build quality, okay, yeah, a metal frame would be a lot nicer, but that would push the price up, of course, and it's all about just offering the maximum, I think, in spec for what you are paying to get this model here being an affordable model. So yes, if you did drop it, the plastic frame would probably chip that chrome style to it. It has a 2 megapixel camera that is a macro camera, and I really wish they didn't do this. I think an ultra wide would be a lot more practical. Even if it was just 8 megapixels, you can get a lot more in the shot, and I'm pretty sure most people would take more ultra wide photos than they would macro. So that's one area of improvement. Video could be a little bit better, that quality too as well. Low light performance needs a little bit of work, but we don't have optical image stabilization, of course, not at this price point, nor would I expect it. So battery life is decent enough. You can play all those games out there that are demanding, even like Genshin Impact as I showed you. It's playable, so that is good. And the charge time, just over an hour and 10 minutes, isn't too bad for 33 watt charging. You've got the FM radio too as well. So if you are on a limited budget, then it's offering, I think, quite a bit here. So good value proposition from Infinix. And I hope to check out and review more of their phones. Thank you so much for watching my video here on the Hot 40 Pro.